I am now going to read the conclusion of the paper, Domestic, Regional, and International Protection of Nigerian Women Against Discrimination, Constraints and Possibilities. This paper was published in 2002. And here is the conclusion. Luckily, the conclusion is refreshingly short, which is not the case for the other sections of the paper. So here is part 4 and conclusion. In terms of domestic protections of the problems militating against the elimination of discrimination against women in Nigeria, the most important is the fact that de jure guarantees do not necessarily imply de facto recognition of women's enjoyment of women's rights. Aisha Imam argues that the Nigerian social structure favors men over women, resulting in exploitation, which effectively subordinates women in all spheres of life. For this exploitation to be eliminated, structural change must occur. The most desirable form of change must be multidimensional in nature, incorporating changes in state legal policy as well as social policy. In addition, power relations in the family must change. However, it is refreshing that more recent scholarship is subjecting the argument of generalized male dominance in Nigerian society to closer scrutiny. The consensus emerging is that more study has to be done to highlight examples that contradict generalizations of male dominance, especially historically, in Nigerian society. Concrete steps to change the social structure must include mass organization among women, directly at surmounting the class divisions among them. This is necessary for the purposes of consciousness raising, as well as for developing a common front to emphasize and promote in political debate. Since most discrimination is justified by references to culture, evidence about the positive role of women in pre-colonial Nigeria should be presented and widely promoted to counter negative stereotypes and narratives. Despite Nigeria's grueling economic crisis, the education of women must be given utmost priority to enhance their ability to exercise self-determination in the control over their bodies and to participate as equals in the labor force. Education must also be extended to the rest of society on the importance of promoting and protecting women's rights. The involvement of more women in policymaking within the government at local, regional, and federal levels must be further instituted and entrenched. Some steps have been taken in this direction by the federal government of Nigeria, which, beginning under the Mohammed Obasanjo administration, made the appointment of one woman in every decision-making and consultative body mandatory. However, there must also be legal reforms which enhance the protection of the rights of women in Nigeria and remove present abuses by calling for the equal application of administrative procedures. So contemporarily, right now, those 5 gender bills that didn't sail through the last national legislature, they must be passed. And they should also be passed in all states to remedy the dismal reputation of Nigeria on gender balance, gender equity, and gender equality. And also to dramatically increase the percentage of women in public office to meet the declaration of 35% women in the national gender policy. So constraints limiting the elimination of discrimination against women also arise from the nature of the international system, which seeks to formalize these protections. Some of these problems can be attributed to the relative newness of this body of rights and the institutionalized procedures for promoting and protecting them. The Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women is the body vested with the authority to investigate, review, and evaluate the performance of states which are parties to the convention. These are Articles 17 to 20 of the convention. Unfortunately, the committee lacks adequate resources for enforcing legal guarantees within the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and it receives inadequate cooperation from members who have signed the convention. These are the things that are, because the member states refuse to submit reports or they are slow in submitting their reports, it impedes the work of the committee. Moreover, several countries, including the United States, have thus not ratified the convention, or they have introduced so many reservations that make the convention meaningless. In cases where the convention has been ratified, mechanisms for self-enforcement are sometimes unavailable. International protections currently are basically then exhortatory in nature, and they do not carry the force of law. An additional problem arises from the need for the committee to coordinate and integrate its work with other UN organs dealing with women. A problem with international guarantees is that signatories to the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women are expected to introduce constitutional and legislative changes which give effect to the Convention's protections. Governments are then expected to make periodic reports on the progress made according to Article 2 of the Convention. Such self-policing leaves room for abuses. Due to these and other problems, the committee has been somewhat limited in its ability to live up to its potential. The same problems apply to regional protections. There is no doubt that the elimination of discrimination against women involves much more than legal protections and social engineering. It is obvious that activism among women, which has always been an important part of Nigerian life, must continue. In addition, there must be more cooperative action among women of all classes and in all areas and regions of Nigeria. The guiding principle must be the one found already in some groups in the country, that as long as some women still live under discriminatory conditions, all women are affected. Finally, there must also be the fine-tuning of national, regional, and international protections in order to remove elements of vagueness and combat inaccurate portrayals of women, as well as provide more concrete enforcement mechanisms to guarantee more effectively the rights of women. These protections must be seen as building blocks in a constantly evolving process. Thank you very much. This concludes this long paper.